are an act of war to some degree. Over time, they're attacks on goods. I mean, the tooth fairy doesn't pay up. I mean, and see, you always have to just, and then what? You always have to ask that question in economics. Always say, and then what?
That is, of course, legendary investor Warren Buffett, a warning Sunday morning about President Trump's tariffs, which did go into effect, 25% tariffs, in fact, on imports from Canada and Mexico going in overnight. The Trump administration imposing an extra 10% tariff on China on top of the already instituted 10% tax on Chinese imports. Both China and Canada moved swiftly after midnight to retaliate, announcing their own levies on U.S. goods. Canada vowed tariffs of up to 25%. And late yesterday, the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, warned the economic back and forth will be a disaster for both countries.
It's one person that's coming to attack us economically. Your closest friend, your treasured ally that will stand shoulder to shoulder with you in every situation you faced. And he's attacking the person, his number one customer. There's no country in the world that buys more products off the U.S. than we do. We're the number one trading customer to 28 states. And a lot of them are red states. They're going to feel the pain like they've never felt before.
Meanwhile, Mexico's president expected to announce her response at a news conference in Mexico City later this morning. Together, China, Canada, and Mexico accounted for more than 40% of all U.S. imports last year. Also, its top three export markets for the United States. Let's bring in the anchor of CNBC's Worldwide Exchange, Frank Holland. Frank, so how are the markets reacting to these new tariffs? Looked like they kind of were anticipating them yesterday.
Yeah, good morning. Right now, we're looking at the futures. I'm looking right now, I mean, basically flat, moving fractionally higher or lower. But of course, yesterday, we saw a major sell-off on Wall Street with the S&P 500, often called the broader market, having its worst day of the year. The tech-heavy NASDAQ down more than 2.5%. So these tariffs, they're raising a lot of questions for investors, business leaders, and small business owners. We can't leave Main Street out of this. The questions are, will they spark inflation? Will they metaphorically be the straw on the back of the camel for the consumer that's already stretched thin? And what will other countries do in response? From tariffs to other measures. Today, we saw China put U.S. biotech company Illumina on their list of companies that they believe threaten national security. And while these kind of things, it's not necessarily official retaliation. There's other companies that work within China that need state approval for different business initiatives. One name often mentioned is Apple. They essentially need Chinese government approval to launch their Apple Intelligence service for iPhones there. So as we look at this, the question is, what kind of impact will tariffs have on the U.S. economy and on the markets? We had the head of research for JP Morgan on my show yesterday. According to her research, last year, the effective tariff rate here in the U.S., it was about 2%, just over that. With these tariffs that went into effect today, that's going to jump up to approximately 9%. And then we also have a Wall Street that's become increasingly sensitive to economic reports and economic data. Yesterday, we had one that certainly seemed to shock investors. It came from the Atlanta Fed. They put out a forecast for GDP, gross domestic product, kind of the report card for the economy. They update it on a regular basis. So back on February 28th, they had a forecast of GDP being down 1.5% for Q1. Yesterday, they put out a new forecast down 2.8%. Certainly a shock to the market, a big change when it comes to that. So a lot of questions about these tariffs and how's it all going to play out. There was some thought before that these tariffs, they were a negotiating ploy, but now we see the president's very serious about implementing them.